اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.
Of human lives lived is the one that's lived closest to the life and example of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And likewise, the most unsuccessful, the most detested of lives lived is the one that's lived most distant from the example and life of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And our aim in life is to love Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than all our possessions, more than our own family, more than our own self. And in the famous hadith, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's holding hands with Hazrat Umar. Yeah, they're holding hands, radiallahu anhu. The two of them are walking, holding hands, imagine that. And he says, Ya Umar, how much do you love me? And he says, Ya Rasulullah, I love you more than all my wealth, more than all my possessions, more than my children, my family, more than everything except myself, he says. Look at the honesty of Hazrat Umar, mashallah. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, Ya Umar, to have complete faith, to have complete iman, you have to love me more than everything, including your own self. SubhanAllah. So this is our aim in life. And many of the Sahaba, they showed this. In the Battle of Uhud, there's a lady, and they come up to her and they say, your son has been killed. She says, okay, but how is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? They say, your son's been killed, your husband and your father. She says, okay, but how is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That's all she cared about. And when she saw the Prophet ﷺ, his cheek was bleeding and he had mud on his face, she said, that caused more pain in my heart than my family members dying. So this is a lady who loves the Prophet ﷺ more than her own family. In the Battle of Uhud again, Hazrat Talha radiallahu anha, he shields the Prophet ﷺ. He says, Ya Rasul, you crouch down, I will shield you. I will shield you. He's getting arrows in his back. He's got arrows in his back like a porcupine, subhanAllah. He's giving his own body, his own life for Sayyidina Muhammad. These are people who love Sayyidina Muhammad more than their own self. And Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, he says even about this one, the president, you know, president of the United States, he has these special bodyguards, you know that, and they're trained, they're on good wages, they're paid huge sums of money. Week in, week out, they have to train that if something happens to the president, they jump in the way of that. You know, our Sahaba were not trained, they didn't have any training. They weren't paid a penny, but they wouldn't hesitate for a moment to protect Sahaba. But subhanAllah, this hadith is very deep if you look at it. To love Sayyidina Muhammad more than your own self, it means you've got no ego. Your ego is finished. There's no desire. There's only the desire of Sayyidina Muhammad. Muhammad governs your very reality. He governs your outward manifestations, your outward actions. Before you do something, you're thinking, what would Sayyidina Muhammad do? How would he react in this situation? And another short story is the story of Anas ibn Malik. Anas ibn Malik was the servant of Sayyidina Muhammad from a young age, from 10 till 20, he was doing all the chores for him. And he says that when we got invited to people's houses regularly, they'd always make dubba, they'd always make pumpkin for the Prophet ﷺ. And he says, I hated pumpkin. This is Anas saying, I hated pumpkin. But I saw the Prophet ﷺ, his hand frequently going and eating the pumpkin. And I noticed that the Prophet ﷺ, he loves pumpkin. This is why whenever he goes somewhere, they make pumpkin for him. And he says, even though I hated it, because the Prophet ﷺ loved it, I had a little bit, and then I had a bit more, and I had a bit more, until I loved it. Such a simple hadith, but so important. The Sahaba, they had ego as well. They had ego, but if the Prophet ﷺ loved something, they trained their egos. They did it until they loved it. They came into perfect alignment with Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ. That was the Sahaba. So, and Abdullah ibn Abbas, he says, when we looked in the mirror, we only saw Muhammad. When we looked in the mirror, this is what the Sahaba, they became photocopies of Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ. And this is all the awliya, even till this time. There's awliya, there's friends of Allah. Before becoming friends of Allah, they became friends of Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ. They came into alignment with Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ. They became carbon copies of Sayyidina Muhammad. So if you're ever fortunate enough to meet a friend of Allah, you'll see they're carrying all the sunnah, outwardly and inwardly. They're not leaving a single sunnah. So inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring us into alignment of Sayyidina Muhammad. And if someone says, what's your favourite food? We don't say burger and chips and pizza, we say food of Sayyidina Muhammad, that is our favourite food. We like dates, we like milk. And if they say, what's your favourite sport? We say what's favourite sport is a sport of Sayyidina Muhammad. It's wrestling. That's why we're here every Monday, because this is what the Prophet ﷺ loved, and that's what his Sahaba loved. And if you're struggling to do this, then it's got to be archery or horse riding or swimming. These are only sports, the sports of Sayyidina Muhammad. So may Allah increase our love for Sayyidina Muhammad and keep us close and connected to his teachers who teach us the love of Sayyidina Muhammad and the realities of Sayyidina Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin Nabiyyil Ummi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim.